What's up, everyone? Welcome to Show Me the Meaning, Wisecrack's movie podcast.
Show me the meaning! I heard you paint houses!
That's right, I paint houses. Welcome, welcome. My name is Jacob. I'm filling in for Jared, who is out today on vacation. I'm joined here by Ryan, as you just heard, and...
What up, film
What
fans?
up, what up? And Austin out in Australia still?
Yeah, we're down under, man.
Down under, mate. No better crew to talk about a nice old mafia movie. Today we're discussing The Irishman, written by Steven Zalian, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring everybody: Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, Ray Romano. I can keep going on. As always, let's go around and get first impressions. What was it like the first time you saw this movie? If you watched it a second time like me and Austin, I don't know if you did, Ryan. What was it like the second time you saw it? And let's start with you, Ryan. What was it like? Tell us.
Well, you know, you called this The Irishman. I think someone needs to explain to Martin Scorsese that his movie is called The Irishman because he put a title screen for I Heard You Paint Houses.
I know, I saw that.
I don't know if you all caught that.
I did.
But that was bizarre. I thought it was pretty cool, though.
It looked good. It was nicely done.
I was anticipating more title screens throughout, like chapter divisions, and they
Me too.
weren't. So
Yeah.
so retroactively, it made me think, okay, I mean, that was a very conscious, big block lettered decision.
Yes.
So what's going on there,
Yeah.
And real quickly, before I get into my first review, Jacob, did I hear you say that you went into this first screening not knowing it was a true story?
That's right. I didn't know that you caught that. So
I did.
So
That's
okay, let
crazy
me.
to me.
Well, I go into every movie, pretty much every movie, knowing nothing because I've been disappointed far too many times. So like anytime I get too amped or too jazzed, I get disappointed. So what I do now is I kind of go in knowing nothing. I knew nothing about this movie. So I saw it with Jared at the Egyptian Theater, now that Netflix runs the Egyptian. And yeah, I just sort of saw it. And to me, I was like, oh, he's just made another Goodfellas or he's made another Casino. Great movie.
Well, Goodfellas and Casino were both about real people, too.
Yes,
True
so
stories.
I don't know anything. I should not be here hosting. I'm filling in. That's my no. I didn't know much about this movie, and I didn't know much about those stories. I just didn't know much about what was going on. I knew Jimmy Hoffa was obviously a real character. I wasn't sure how much of this was fictionalized around him. And then in the second watching and researching for this podcast, first time I watched it, I had no intention of coming on this podcast. Now that I did, I was like, okay. There's a lot more going on. Every single character can be kind of Googled and researched. That's interesting. Every moment, like the Nashville court scene. I mean, everything is sort of a historical moment. So it felt to me more like watching Lincoln this time.
Okay.
Not to be disparaging, but I thought it was like a little more historical. There was more to get out of it. So anyway, what was it like the first time you saw it, Ryan?
Okay. Yeah, because I'm the opposite of you. I read like a fuck ton of movie blogs and movie review sites and stuff. So it's pretty rare that I go into a movie completely blind. I do, I try to stay away from spoilers and stuff, obviously. But I knew a lot about this story going into it, and I haven't read the book. I Heard You Paint Houses, but I pretty much know the entire story. And yeah, so I could not wait for this movie. This was the Expendables of Martin Scorsese verse.
Well, I do follow you, or we're friends on Facebook. I did see your the anticipation with your full on fucking list of Martin Scorsese movies.
That's right. Yes, I made an entire list. I ranked every Scorsese film that I'd ever seen. Wolf of Wall Street's at the top. I was trying to see where The Irishman would fall in, and basically. I really love this movie. I mean, it is not the home run out of the ballpark hit that I wanted it to be. It's not Goodfellas. It's not as good as Casino, even in my opinion. It doesn't. But I don't. Sorry, let me cough. Sorry, live people. But I don't really. At the end of the day, I think it was even aspiring to be like those movies, even though it obviously does fit in nicely next in the filmography with those. But it has a completely different aesthetic, whereas those two films are very, very tightly bound together by their aesthetic. And, this one's 10 times slower. It's 3.5 hours, even though I guess the other two are 3 hours too. But this one feels way slower, obviously, because, it's about fucking geriatric people. It's Goodfellas meets grumpy old men, and which I didn't know I needed, but I really liked it. And I too saw it in one sitting at the Egyptian Theater, like you, which I think is the only way to watch this movie. I do think that
it's very cinematic.
I'd be curious to hear. I'd be curious to hear people's emails. Like the difference between the people that watch in the theater versus the people that watch it in like 3 parts on Netflix. Because honestly, by the time you're on your 3rd sitting to watch The Irishman, if that's how you did it, I feel like you're pretty much, it's like a chore for you. You're like, all right, I got to finish this movie. People tell me it's supposed to be important. Whereas we saw it in 3.5 hours, which was too long. It is a too long movie, I would say. It doesn't need to be 3.5 hours, but I will say that I was completely engrossed and engaged the entire time. I was rarely like twiddling my thumbs.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, it fired on all cylinders with the aesthetic. The pacing was cool and different. The de-aging was weird, but honestly, I liked it at the end of the day, and it kind of made my imagination run wild with the possibilities of how you could apply that stuff. I mean, it obviously they looked old even when they were young sometimes, which is, it didn't work perfectly, but I got used to it. So overall, I mean, I give it a solid A-.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Really great movie. I will tell you very briefly before you get to y'all's, I had a funny... I went on a date to see this movie with somebody. It was our second date. It was her idea to see this 3.5 hour long movie. And I'm like, okay, great, but I've been wanting to see it. Let's go. And then we go to the Egyptian, and I swear to God, she starts coughing, right? Which, she's sick. You can't get mad at someone for coughing, but she does it every 10 seconds for 3.5 hours. And I was never going to say anything. I got her some water to help it, but then everybody around me literally starts saying, hey, can you please leave after about 2 hours of her being there? And so I was in this painful... I was in this Curb Your Enthusiasm episode from hell where we're literally, me and my date are ruining the whole movie for 500 people at the Egyptian.
Oh, no.
Because of something she can't change. She's sick. What is she going to do? And so then I'm sitting there going, and then she says, Ryan, stay here. I'm going to go in the back. And so I listened to her and I didn't leave. That was how that, so I'm an awful date. Never go on a date with me to a movie. I will leave you in the movie if you're sick and you can go to the back.
So 2 things. First, did you watch it again?
Yes, so that viewing experience was a little fucked, but I did enjoy it. But then, I did watch it with my folks when I came back for Thanksgiving. Okay, and once again, we watched it on Netflix, but in 2 parts. And that was definitely not as fun as the first time, even though the first one had the coughing incident.
So let's go to you, Austin. What was it like watching this movie the first time? What was it like watching it again? What was your rating?
So the first time I saw it in the theater, second time I did a 2-part viewing on Netflix, and I actually didn't mind the 2-part viewing of it. It felt kind of nice, like it was a mini-series almost, And I went in with, I guess, the historical biographical lens. So I went in knowing that this was going to have some sort of, that it was going to be like entertainment historical biography, And it totally was. It totally was. And I was hesitant before seeing it because I'm kind of tired of so much cinema, right? Now, I know that Scorsese is not the average director. What's up?
Yeah, say what?
I was just saying, say what? Tired of too much cinema.
Well, contemporary cinema. Not tired of the cinematic form. I'm bored with what is being produced. And so... when I saw that it was going to be another gangster film, I was like, I mean, how many times is he going to make a gangster film? I was like, I know it's him. I should give him like a long leash. But then I was like, also in this landscape, cinema seems to just be saying the same shit, reproducing the same stories, just with different names attached to it. So I was a little bit Mr. McGrumpy Face before I went in, right? And I was completely...
Austin.
Yeah. Well, get your sound effect ready because my mind was blown. So there it is. I was wrong, man. This is a masterpiece. This is absolutely fantastic. It's actually one of my favorite, I would say it is for me, top tier Scorsese film. I think it's absolutely amazing, especially considering it post
I'm gonna keep
post Wolf of Wall Street
there.
because I was making a lot of kind of political and social and economic connections that we can get into. But I also thought there were some really interesting religious themes. I think it might even be a sort of like personal reflective manifesto of Scorsese reminiscing about coming to grips with mortality in his own life. There's some really interesting themes about empires rising and falling and these great leaders and strong men who seem to be on top of the world, but then everybody kind of dies. You all end up in the same place. So there's some really kind of meditative and lovely themes to address. And then I think the acting was terrific. Yeah, the aging makeup stuff was kind of funky and weird. But nevertheless, honestly, across the board, I think this is absolutely fantastic. And I really want to read this film in conjunction with Wolf of Wall Street, because I think what Wolf of Wall Street is for the age of financialization, this film is for the age of like Fordism, the age prior, pre-Reagan. This is like the pre-Reagan Wolf of Wall Street, or we could inversely say that Wolf of Wall Street is like post-financialization, post-neoliberalism, Irishman. I think there's a really interesting conjunction.
I'm very...
But no one's having fun in The Irishman. They're all getting killed.
No, they're having so much fun. That's the whole point. Look at all they do is celebrate each other. They have these meetings where they're embracing their power and they talk about how great each other are, and they're kind of just trying to achieve power. They're different, of course. They're not the same thing. They're not mirror images of one another, but they are kind of like distorted images of similar tendencies, but what happens when you're in a different socioeconomic framework. So you still have organized crime in Wolf of Wall Street. It's just a little bit more legitimate, and it takes place in the age of like finance and those mechanisms that lead to financial crises, like the collapse
but it's
of 2008,
excessive.
right?
I think that's I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today, because I think there is like this sort of feeling that there's something else. Well, there's a lot more to read into. Of course, we want to get into the religious reading. We're talking about Scorsese. There's obviously the priest, and there's like the redemption angle. I'm very curious. I think just a quick segue to me. I watched it with Jared at the Egyptian. I had a really good time. To me, my first of all, I did cry. There was a moment there where I cried. Didn't cry the second time around, but it was a moment, I think, around the daughter saying, "Look, you kind of fucked up." I think it was that, and maybe him like shopping for his own tombstone and stuff.
And her 10 words that she said in the movie.
Exactly.
No, I was like, the other daughter,
those 10
right?
words. No, not Peggy. Yeah. His other daughter, who's like, "Look, you know, I couldn't come to you, or what you would do." But the I thought, like, wow, these guys are all top of their game. Like, you got Scorsese, such a craftsman, able to do his thing. Like, he knows how to make a fucking movie. From the first few scenes, you're like, or first few moments, you're like, I'm already in. The music's perfect. The cinematography's great. And then you got these actors who are just like, this ain't no thing for them to just like step right up and just do a great job. So I told Jared, I was like, wow, these are all these guys like just top of their game. It's awesome. And Jared's like, I don't know. I don't think they're top of their game. I think they're like well past their prime. It's not nearly as fun as Wolf of Wall Street. They're like living the big life, but like Ryan just said, there's actually no excess. There's actually no, like, you don't see them enjoying their money. You don't see them really doing anything. They're just collecting like wallets full or envelopes full of cash, stacking it in the glove compartment, and that's like the end of what we see. So, but I enjoyed it.
That's
found
like
it
the
poignant.
morose element that comes into it, right? Because he constantly, how does he describe everyone? He puts titles up on the screen, and it's like, this person was shot in the face.
I thought that
this
was
person died
very
this way.
funny.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. So that it's
I didn't
all
mean to cut you off.
filtered. No. So it's like all filtered through death in the end, right?
That's true.
So that's why I think it's like a distorted version. They're not mirror images, like I said again. But there's a really interesting way to read them, and I think it's because post-Reagan economics is more excessive, right? It just is like the time of Wall Street guys doing blow and hooking up with strippers and shit like that. Like, that's kind of like the caricature of it, right? But this is more like serious, you might die, organized labor battling against the corporation. So it's like it's less excessive on purpose, and then filter that all through a man who's a director / creator, storyteller
Who might
who's
be approaching his
musing
own
on
end.
death
Yeah.
and things like
No,
that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm very pumped to dive into that.
It totally is. I totally agree with what you're saying, Austin. Except I feel like it's less about the filter through death. You know, but I think that he's really trying to comment more on his mafia movies like Goodfellas, Casino, because Wolf of Wall Street, they're not organized crime. It's not even the same ballpark. You know, I know you can make the point of it's legal organized crime or whatever. But all I'm saying is that. Is that this is like Thelma Schumacher, the editor of his longtime editor. She basically was in an interview and said, like, Goodfellas and Casino, he wanted you at the end of those movies to not want to be a gangster and realize how much how much death and suffering this lifestyle leads. But everyone was having so much fun during the movie in Goodfellas that people wanted to be gangsters. Whereas in Irishman, he definitely was going out of his way to make a gangster movie about the real life suffering and repercussions of this
Totally.
lifestyle, and it's not fun. It's like you're seeing you are seeing people having a little fun in like the restaurants, wining and dining, but then immediately it's you see their title card when they die, how they die.
You're literally
it's
only seeing
horrific, it's brutal. It's not going to be a fun life for them.
Yeah, it's only like the non-glamorous parts of the lifestyle. Well, before we move on, in case you don't remember the 3.5-hour movie and synopsis, I'm going to give you a really quick blurb of what the movie was about, quick recap. And then we'll move on to the show. So, an elderly Frank the Irishman Sheeran reflects on his life as a working stiff... let me take that one more time. An elderly Frank the Irishman Sheeran reflects on his life as a working stiff truck driver who, after some criminal dabbling, is saved from jail by his lawyer Bill Bufalino. Sheeran promptly falls in with the Bufalino crime family held by the head thug Russell, who he starts working for and murdering for. Eventually, Bufalino introduces Sheeran to Teamsters union leader and underworld liaison Jimmy Hoffa, who Sheeran becomes bodyguard and friend to. Under a Kennedy presidency, Hoffa's crimes catch up with him, and he's sent to jail. The Teamsters struggle in his absence. Upon being pardoned by Nixon, Hoffa sets out to regain his power and become president of the Teamsters again, while finding himself at odds with the crime families. Sheeran warns Hoffa that he's lost favor with the underworld, but Hoffa insists that he has too much dirt on everyone to be worried. Come 1975, Sheeran and Russell are on their way to Bill's daughter's wedding when Sheeran learns he's been assigned now to kill Hoffa. Reluctantly, Sheeran sets Hoffa up, shoots him, and has him sent off to a crematorium, all in time to make it to the wedding in Detroit. Harsh. After a while, Sheeran and co. are charged and convicted of unrelated crimes and sent to jail. An elderly Sheeran is released into a nursing home, but his family refuses to reconcile with him. He consults with the priest who offers him absolution and pieces out, leaving Sheeran to spend Christmas all alone. End of movie. Now, before we move on, I want to give a quick shout out to our awesome sponsor, Skillshare. It's the new year coming up, and you're going to have a bunch of resolutions. You want to get your skills up to speed, and Skillshare is the perfect companion for you. So getting out of the rut and staying creative is easier said than done, especially with a busy schedule. Maybe you want to get back into an old passion that you've had or learn something new. Well, you can build, fuel, and expand your creative fire with Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for the creator in all of us. They have thousands of classes and all sorts of things. I've taken their classes on illustration and graphic design. They've got courses on photography, UI design, creative writing, animation, fine arts, music production, which I've also taken, film and video, marketing, productivity, freelance, entrepreneurship, you name it. They've got it. So their classes are on demand. You can learn at your own pace. It'll save your place too, so you just log right back in and pick up where you left off. You can get inspired, join a class, and create something that you love. And for those who know all the work that I do at Wisecrack, I've done everything from graphic design and logos to I just did some audio editing today. I learned literally everything that I've done here from online courses. I've taken hundreds of them at this point. I love learning new stuff and learning these techniques. And for me, it's like the great way to learn is log in, see someone else do it, and then kind of follow those instructions. So join the millions of students who are already learning on Skillshare and get 2 months free of unlimited access to all of their classes at Skillshare.com/Wisecrack. That's 2 full months of unlimited access to their thousands of classes completely free. Get started at Skillshare.com/Wisecrack to sign up. I've taken the Thomas Frank class on productivity, which was awesome. Another YouTuber's also In a Nutshell and Kurzgesagt teach a class on motion graphics, which is awesome. And I just found the new class by Jessica Heish on Logo Type Masterclass, which is how to create really beautiful logos that are more than just a logo, or more than just words. And if you want to actually check out Skillshare's new logo, it's pretty apt and apropos, considering that's the class that I like. So go check out that course or any other course that you'd like. Again, Skillshare.com/Wisecrack. And now, back to the show.
Sweet. If I can jump in real quick on something that Ryan said before,
Sure.
and I think is really interesting to kind of clarify what I was saying about this pre-Reagan and post-Reagan thing.
Yeah, please. I'd like
So
to. Yeah, that
Ryan
sounds
made a
super
really
interesting.
interesting point. He said, I guess you could kind of say it's organized crime, but it's legal organized crime. If that kind of seems
Which one was?
paradoxical or contradictory.
The Wolf of Wall Street, the finance crimes.
Yeah, exactly. That when we look at the activities that Jordan Belfort gets arrested for, or if you look at some of the things that a lot of people criticize, let's say the the financial institutions for participating in that led to the collapse of in 2007 to 2009, right? And that just in general seemed to run rampant. And then we kind of say, okay, so what characterized organized crime? Well, a lot of the stuff that characterized like official, like mob crime, right, was bribery, was using strong arm tactics, were threats,
extortion,
embezzlement, coercion, etc., etc. Those same things that were crimes that brought down a lot of the top mob bosses, that led to like Senate councils being erected to chase after these figures, are the prime tactics, the actual mechanisms of the way that financial institutions operate, not only domestically, but also globally, right? Like the IMF and the World Bank use strategies of types of bribery. Like, yeah, we'll give you loans if you just abide by what it is that we say you must do. Depress your wages, become an export-led economy, cut your infrastructure.
It's called negotiating, baby.
It's called using strong arm tactics, but who can regulate the regulators, right? So if you are at the top of the pyramid, like, you know, NATO, United Nations, these large kind of international governmental agencies, there's nobody above them. So there's nobody to contest the legitimacy of their authority, right? But what you see here with organized crime is that they weren't quite at the top of the pyramid, so they could still be kind of the recipients of pressure from the top down. But there's really similar stuff going on, right? Like in terms of tactics that are being used, it's just that, for example, in the post-Reagan era, when you have the deregulation of the economy, you don't really have that. There's no body above the corporations, or there's no body above the financial institutions. The financial institutions become much more embedded within that, whatever the components are of governance at the top of the pyramid. So that's why I think it's really interesting to kind of think about, because Scorsese's a moralist, right? So in a way, I almost feel like he was criticizing some of the stuff going on in Wolf of Wall Street, although people maybe missed that. But you absolutely get the moralism here. And I almost kind of get that he's saying like, hey, if you act in a shady way, it doesn't matter what your context is. Like, you will have to pay some sort of recompense at the end of your life, because as Joe Pesci / Russell's character tells Jack at one point when he says he's going to church, he's like, you'll see, like, you'll get it. You know, when you're old and you're about to die, everybody dies alone. You got to atone for your sins. So don't be like an immoral person in your life. It doesn't matter if it's legitimate or if it's illegitimate, or if you get away with it or not. We all got to pay to a higher power. And God is that ultimate higher power that you can't get above. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I mean, I definitely would at the end of the day, the organized crime and the Goodfellas, Mafia, and Casino are dealing with vices that are illegal, right? So that's how they differ in a big way from these legal, quote unquote, you know, financial crimes and stuff that, right. So there's a big difference between those. And then they're also dealing with violence. They're illegal. Like Wolf of Wall Street, the Wolf of Wall Street guys are not dealing like violently coming after you and threatening to break your kneecaps, you know.
Or shooting.
Well, I mean,
joints.
they're not, but they do shake people down. Remember, there is the bit where they hold the guy over the railing and they're like scaring people and shit. So they do use some shady tactics. And then if you take the government level, then you do have guns pointed at another nation, and you're like, hey, motherfuckers,
you don't got to tell me
access.
twice, man. I'm all, yeah.
You're libertarian, I know.
The gun to the government. I'm not a fan of that.
There's a similar.
But that's precisely what I mean. That point that you made about illegality is so interesting, though, right? So, like, in like the Wolf of Wall Street, obviously they cross the line and they go through stuff that's illegal. But maybe what Scorsese's saying in this is that it doesn't matter if it's illegal according to human institutions or that it's immoral according to the human way of life, but that God is that higher power that we ultimately, at the end of our lives, you got to pay some
There's
sort
the final
of
judge.
There's
also similar shots, like if you see the scene, I think it's is it Tony Pro when he's like getting arrested in Miami and he's like running away from the agents and kind of fooling around, and it feels super similar to Jordan Belfort being like running away and getting chased by the FBI agents in Wolf of Wall Street. But let's dive into the actual text first, because I was trying to think of how to structure this conversation because there's a lot. Let's talk about the movie. Let's talk about, I think, the themes that I wanted to bring up. Maybe there's others. I wanted to talk about Peggy. I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of like the broken down truck and getting the help of the mafia, or getting the help of Russell to get on his way, and that there's a sort of an inversion of that later. I wanted to dive into regret and this redemption and this very religious theme. I think death is a great one that you brought up. So we have a lot to go into. And there's also another question about leaving the door open, which I think we can sort of start anywhere on these, but what sort of speaks to you first? And then I want to get into some of the meta stuff around, like the CGI stuff and making a $160 million movie and a lot of the other pieces. But let's start with the movie itself, the text and the narrative here. This is Steven Zalian's script. And then, of course, we've got the history, which you can dive into, too. So we can make this a 3.5-hour podcast if you like.
I don't remember who it was. Someone on Twitter, actually, when I said that we were going to talk about this, said, is it going to be as long as the movie? And I was like, I think we're going to be a little more efficient.
We'll try to be. Let's try. Let's start with let's just start with.
Oh, I'm a blabberer.
Right.
I don't know.
Let's just talk. Let's talk about really quickly about
Not
Peggy.
articulate.
I don't know if there's much to say here. This is his daughter Peggy. She's very reticent and resilient, and she's sort of like very standoffish with her father. We see kind of this loss of innocence happen as soon as Frank beats up the shop owner for some kind of small, and I don't know what he did, but maybe he put his hand on her or did something, and he beats the shit out of him, and that sort of becomes this moment where we see Frank really become a different man. And Peggy, for the rest of the film, aside from Jimmy Hoffa, aside from that relationship, which is, again, almost like maybe a bit, almost like a caricature of like her affection for him. But Peggy's clearly a key kind of symbol for him as he tries to make amends. Let's dive into her a little bit.
What do you think it is that, why does she like Jimmy?
That was I thought that maybe there was an element of maybe it's the charisma, maybe he's lovable. There were a lot of lines about Jimmy Hoffa being, the most amazing guy in the world, or one of the most famous people in the world, up there with Elvis and the Beatles. I think Scorsese, or at least the script, is trying to paint him to actually be to actually have like a really good heart, or like his heart's in the right place, or something about him is like a little more angelic and a little more of it's a little perfect, it's a little bit immaculate, which is strange.
Do you think Scorsese kind of sees Jimmy as being like the actual historical figure of Jimmy Hoffa as almost being like unfairly demonized, and that maybe that's partly what's going on here? So that like Russell and even her father, Frank, she views them with skepticism because she just has like a sense that she can just intuit that they're bad because they're the mobsters.
People. Yeah.
But Jimmy, he's a union guy. He's a teamster. Yeah, he participates in some of the activities with the mob, and he was a quote unquote mobster, we would say. But that we've unfairly caricatured him because of his participation with these other people. But really, he had the best interest of workers, and to try to create solidarity across the lines. And so she was able to intuit that goodness, and that actually Hoffa's a good guy, but put in a very difficult political and social and ethical set of situations.
And I guess technically he never killed anyone, although we don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's like an allusion
Right.
to it with the Kennedys, but there's she's sort
right.
of maybe that's ultimate. Oh, the violence isn't there. I mean, he's not a violent guy. I don't know. I mean, there's something that she's very, very.
There's definitely
resistant to.
something there that he's a union guy out for a dude for the people, so that inherently makes him a sympathetic character, I think, to Peggy. But also in terms of the movie and the structure of the film, he kind of functions as the wild card, go off the chains. Have y'all seen Mean Streets by any chance?
I have not.
Yeah.
It's his movie that got him really big, and De Niro's character Johnny Boy, or no, I'm sorry, it might be Harvey Keitel's character. Either way, one of them just is a guy that just flies off the handle, and the whole movie is about them just coming in and fucking everything up, and you're just like, holy shit, you cannot be more of a fuck up, but it's and other people having to save his ass. So I feel like that Jimmy Hoffa kind of is that in the movie, is Johnny Boy or the other guy, I'm sorry, and it's just like no matter what, he's his own worst enemy, and he gets the best of himself.
There's another movie that I'm thinking about that does that. I can't remember if it's Network or there's something else that's sort of speaking to me of like that kind of idea of like he can't help himself. He's such a loose cannon that he's just like digging his own grave.
Loose cannon's the perfect word I was looking for. Yeah,
totally. Just at every chance when he's warned, he just kind of strokes his own flame again even further.
But it's
I don't know though if Scorsese is saying though that Jimmy Hoffa was a great guy and didn't deserve, or some comeuppance too, like in his own moralistic Catholic
the Peggy
way.
thing. I mean, it was the only heartstring really of the whole movie. I mean, because
he's a family friend, dude.
Yeah, he's just a good family friend. And I was telling Austin this earlier. I guess we stand in as the nurse at the end of the film where she doesn't really know who Jimmy Hoffa is, and I'm like, yeah, I knew the name, but I didn't really know him. We're young people who don't know much about Union history, but yeah.
I love at the beginning they say, I think it's Frank that's doing voiceover, and he's like, look, you might not know who Jimmy Hoffa is now, but in the 50s, every single person knew who Hoffa was. He was the second most powerful person in America behind the President of the United States.
Yeah, he says
for me that was so important.
In the 50s, he was as big as Elvis. In the 60s, he was like the Beatles next to the president. He was like the most powerful man in the country, bar none.
Wow. I mean, I know all of the like mysteries surrounding his body. He was never found, and he's probably in like the foundations of some building in whatever city, right? And that all these things, or he's swimming with the fishies like Hoffa or whatever. I've known about that stuff, and I knew that he was a part of the labor movement. But I guess it made me want to call my grandpa. He's passed away, so unfortunately I can't do that. But it made me want to call like grandma or grandpa and be like, hey, what do you guys remember of Hoffa? And just to hear their tale of it, because my parents are still too young. My parents were born in the 60s, and so they would have been like elementary kids / like early junior high when he went missing. So I kind of am curious, maybe, but I'd really like to talk to some of the older generation and see what it is that they remember about this guy, because that was just kind of revelatory for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely got a better glimpse here. Well, let's dive into what I think is an interesting question. Jimmy Hoffa, the first time that Frank meets Jimmy or stays the night with Jimmy at the hotel or apartment or house, wherever he is, Jimmy leaves the door cracked open before he goes to bed. And obviously we kind of focus on that shot for a little bit. And at the very end of the film, which I think is very important to always look at the last kind of moments, at the end, obviously Frank asks the priest, can you leave the door open a little bit? Don't close it all the way. Okay, Austin or Ryan, bring me the meaning. I got to say something, Show me the money! Show me the meaning, baby. What's going on with that open crack door?
Ryan, you jump in first, brother.
About the opening and closing of the film?
Yeah, why is he asking for that? What's the significance of that door being cracked open or left open when going to bed? Is it...
He's a motherfucking hitman, and I assume it's to hear like footsteps coming up on him. I couldn't tell you, honestly. I'm not a hitman. I don't paint houses.
You don't paint houses?
So
I heard you paint houses.
No. But I assume it has it's something to do with just his old ways of, like maybe always wanting to look over his back and see if someone's coming to kill him and get revenge for all of his fucking
I'm going to provide the Jewish reading here. I'm going to say he's leaving it open for Elijah to come on in and have his fill.
I love it. That's right.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You got to keep yourself open to the doors of heaven, my friend.
I mean, obviously the opening of the movie, it's coming in on the nursing home. It's slow as fuck. I think it's Martin Scorsese saying, all right, you're get ready, strap in. You're about to watch a 3.5 hour movie about geriatric people. And boy, does he deliver on that. Joe Pesci, to quote somebody I saw on Twitter, is an age I have not yet seen on a human being. He is so old.
Jared actually said that, when Joe Pesci at the end is doing this little hand thing, Jared's like, he did that a little too well. It scared me.
Yeah, he is so old in this movie. It is insane.
I've got some kind of speculative readings on the door thing.
Sure, the very first scene though, it is we push in through an opening. We push in through kind of a doorway and enter a story, and we kind of leave a story. So it's almost like we're glimpsing into something. But yeah, I'd like to hear your reading, Austin. I feel like this is right up your alley.
Yeah, so I think there are a few things going on here. One, because especially the final 20 minutes are so focused on death, and then of course sprinkled throughout is that everybody is defined by death. Obviously that's important, but this idea that I think, and for people who are listening, I don't know if they remember, but I just recently went through a kind of pretty traumatic health scare as well, and so I kind of was dealing with this when I was in hospital.
Glad you're back, dude.
Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. But this idea, this overwhelming sense that you die alone, no matter what, even if you have family and friends and loved ones there is this fear that this is this subjective experience that you go through completely on your own. And he's looking through these photographs, and the nurse says, "Oh, I haven't seen your one daughter," but you don't really see any of the other family around him coming actively to visit him all the time. He talks about them, but he's looking at them longingly through photographs, through memories, preserved memories. Because again, he's alone. So as we're pulling out and there's that crack in the door, there's a sense in which maybe we can see that we're all alone. We all die alone. But I think there's another layer to this that's even more interesting, and this relates to when Hoffa has the door cracked in the hotel room, which does partly relate to what Ryan was saying. Definitely, it relates to what Ryan was saying. But I want to refer to another great movie that has an amazing doorway shot, and it's Searchers. The final shot in Searchers, where John Wayne, a man of the wild, is not allowed to enter into the house. Now, in classical westerns, and we talked about this in our Logan video, that we produced over a year ago now. So if you're interested in that, but classical westerns are oftentimes defined by the man of the wild. You see this in Shane, which obviously is referred to constantly in Logan, as not being allowed to come into society. Violence is required. The man of violence, the man of the wilderness, comes in to save the town, but can never be a part of the town. So what you get then is that there is this sense in which there's always a barrier, right? Like you can't enter into the world. You can try, but you can't enter into the world. And so that's what's going on, I think, in the final shot maybe, is that he's looking at us. It's the gaze in psychoanalytic terms, is he's looking at us kind of longingly, alone, outside, dying on his own, because maybe violence was required to forge American history as it's caught up with governments and labor unions and special interests. But nevertheless, the man of the wild is not allowed to actually be a part of our world. You can't be, because you are ultimately uncivil.
I think it's a beautiful reading. Beautiful.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's a beautiful reading. That's really, it's really touching. Maybe it's a bit of what I was getting kind of tearing up about toward the end of the film, which was like, why... Yeah, this man did kind of what he had to do. Not that but it's clearly nasty
Austin,
stuff,
you're touching Jacob.
Yeah, you're touching me.
I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills right now.
You're touching the meaning, baby. But
you guys are touching me through the interwebs.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing the feels. So so keep going. You were going to say that you were going to kind of reflect on the Hoffa door.
Yeah, so then what's going on with Hoffa here is that Hoffa and Jack, they don't have that barrier. They connect through the door, right? They're not alone somehow. That somehow they're able to connect. And even though, there's like the constant anxiety, right? Like there's the moment when Joe Hoffa, she tries to start up her car, but she like hesitates because she's like, again, she's looking over her shoulder knowing that she could be blown up. And I think Jimmy Hoffa probably operated like that all the time. That's why he would keep a door cracked. But then when you crack the door, what are you doing? You're inviting something else to help you, to create that solidarity, to create
like
that
trust.
Protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And when you are alone and you're outside, you don't have that. You are completely left to your own devices. And so I think there's something going on there that we can think about as well.
No, it's a great reading.
I really like that reading too. I will say though that I really wish one of us had read this book, because I hear it's awesome for one, but also I bet you that there are people that have read it that are screaming. They're going like, "It's in the book.
I know.
We know why he leaves the door open or something."
Ryan, feel free to bring in some of the comments.
Specifically,
we'll pull those up in a second too. But yeah, if you read this book, and definitely leave us some voicemails too. Our voicemail system is, do you remember the phone number off the top of your head? It's in the description. I'm pulling up all my different notes here, but
something elf gut.
Yeah,
Elf
That's
Hut.
right. But you can leave us a voicemail or send us an email at movies@wisecrack.co. That's movies@wisecrack.co. And our line is 213-534-8807 or 21-ELF-HUT or ELF-GUT-07. And some folks are asking about Jared. Where is he? He's on vacation. We have another video with him coming out tomorrow on the origins of sci-fi, which will be pretty dope. And back in the new year. But I want to. Yeah, I'm loving that reading. I think that's super interesting. That was the kind of the big question to me. Was that door? This is a really light one before we move into the kind of heavier stuff of redemption, regret, the religious readings. It just struck me yesterday where, if you think about Frank's first entry into this whole world, it's him when his truck breaks down. Joe Pesci or Russell helps him fix his truck, and there's sort of a deal with the devil being made there, right? Like he fixes his truck, and all of a sudden he's able to get on his way. And in the same way, Frank I'm sorry, in the same way, Jimmy Hoffa also has sort of a deal with the devil, has a deal with the mafia in order to kind of get on his way. But you see an inversion for both of these folks later on this road trip. You see Frank is fixing the flat tire. So he's like there on the road, now inverting. Now his role is different. Now he's sort of serving and servicing. And it's also on the same trip that inversion happens for Jimmy Hoffa. He's about to be outed because of, or offed, or whatever the terms are.
Whacked.
Whacked. Which brings me to a quick aside. There are so many good lines. There's a lot of comedy in this movie too. A lot of really funny moments. But like when he's talking about the lawyer being dead, he's like, he's dead? He's dead? Who did it? That's the first reaction of the FBI.
Oh yeah, at the end.
Yeah, at the end there. But anyway, I don't know if this broken down truck. I mean, I think just trucks, the Teamsters Union. There's sort of this deal being done. It might be nothing. It probably is nothing. But I just thought it'd be worth bringing up. That shot of them on the side of the highway fixing the tire just seemed like why add that? Because every scene, although it is a long movie, did seem pretty pivotal. I thought it did kind of move the story forward.
Joe Pesci is too fucking old to change a tire at that point.
It's true. He's changed.
I think you're onto something.
I did think it was funny how he kept calling him kid, and I'm like, you guys are both in your like 60s at least, right? Here, I mean,
70s.
I know. In real life,
70s.
They're in their 70s, but like even with the makeup and the aging and stuff, I'm like, you guys still look like you're in your 50s and 60s.
Old men.
Yeah.
So let's talk now about where I think we can't get into Scorsese reading without the religious reading. So we've got the priest character. He's making amends. There's this big theme of redemption, regret. We don't get a lot into Frank's psyche. We don't really. I mean, he really claims to not even really feel that much at all. He doesn't know if he's got regret. Doesn't really know if he's got anything going on in there. And it kind of brings me to like, I guess that the whole movie just seems very passive. Like Frank just seems like a character just kind of just floating from job to job. Doesn't seem to have a lot of be making very active decisions. We don't get to know much about his decision making. But let's just dive specifically into this religious reading. Like I think you mentioned the door being open, maybe the God being the ultimate judge, right?
Real quick, can I say something about what you just said?
Please.
Like about his active decision making, I think you can, or I read a lot into the one scene where he's recounting his war stories there with Joe Pesci, and you see him make those people dig their own graves, and then he shoots them, and then he's also talking about Joe Pesci also being in the foxhole, saying like, if I ever get out of here, like I'll do right or whatever, or sorry, let me take that again for the live cut. Oh yeah, we are live. Fuck, we're not usually live, people. Either way, what I mean to say is that I think that he's a guy that was in the war, obviously was hurt by the war, suffered from the war, and then he came home and he's just like, I'm going to do everything to have a family and have a good life, and I should be dead basically, and I have a second chance. Like everything we see in the movie, most everything we see in the movie is his second chance, and he's basically living it up, being like, I'm going to do whatever it takes because I've already done whatever it takes. I've done more than what all these other normal people walking around have ever done. I've gone to the limits of the human condition. So that's where I think his active decision making is. It's just it all kind of comes back to the war.
Yeah. Do you think that the war is kind of his fall? And I mean that in like the theological sense, like his fall from grace, or his fall from a previous state of Eden, or some sort of degrading move, because he says like, I made my mind up, like what you're talking about, Ryan, when he's like, when I made my mind up when I came back from the war that I would never sin again. And yet all we see is that his whole life becomes progressively more quote unquote sinful, which then culminates in this like redemption thing. So it's almost like the war was the thing that broke him, and then he couldn't get back. So again, it's that man of violence thing, right? It's like it was required. You needed the war, because then there's constant references again, like, oh, you know how it was in the war, like fuck the Nazis and shit like that. And he's like, yeah, that's right, I get it. So it's like, again, there's this reference that was the like the catalyst for his life that set the trajectory of the decisions that he would make. But nevertheless, that's
Yeah.
when he becomes that man of violence. But it was required because what do we get? We get a prosperous America, you get a prosperous West, you get a prosperous labor movement, you get all
We're
these
not
other...
speaking German.
Right. So, you know, it's like these necessary, I think was it Jacob that said it maybe, the necessary evils that he kind of participates in, that he has to through his life. So then the question is if you didn't have a choice, like if you were kind of constrained into this world, there's that one really interesting bit where Joe Pesci gives him the ring on the finger, and he's like, there's only 3 people. There's Angelo, Bruno, myself, and you that have this ring, which again, it's like, now you're one of us. Again, like, and because we give you this, now you owe us, which is like the now you owe us to kill Jimmy kind of.
Yeah, there's constantly this sort of deal with the devil, or it's a give and take. Constantly. Like it
is a very Faustian thing, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it does seem like, I definitely feel like the Russell character at the beginning fixing his truck is like a Faustian, like that is the devil, like some spirit coming along and saying, hey, I'm going to fix your truck, but it's going to come with a price. And yeah, I mean, it certainly feels that way. And
now I'm
separately
thinking,
with the
now
ring.
I'm thinking of Pesci's character of Russell being exactly like that, like Applegate in the play Damn Yankees, or like the
Joe Pesci is Satan.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been saying that since Home Alone.
I forgot about Pesci and Home Alone. Hey-o. Wow.
Jesus.
That's the sequel, huh? So this is its spiritual sequel. No, I mean, I that's what I was trying to kind of get. I don't know, the truck. There was something going on where it just felt to me like Frank, like I said, there's sort of a passive side where he's trying to survive. He's trying to kind of build a new life for himself. He's trying to do well by his family. I don't think he's ever trying to alienate Peggy or anything like that, but no matter what he does, it's just pushing him further and further away, and almost like the post-Western idea, like they're pushing him further and further away and out of society. Although he's pivotal and key to our history, he's key to the cleanest corners of the government, including people like Kennedy, right? Like these people are key to all of that, and it comes with a price, certainly, but but they're also ostracized. So it's just an interesting. There were some interesting dynamics at play with the characters here, and especially since the movie wasn't all that active for the core character here. I mean, he's certainly doing things, but it wasn't like we were getting really into his mind or really understanding if he was regretful or not. And so that was sort of the only place I could kind of see some interesting dynamics at play.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too, because Scorsese, and I might be pressing this too far, but it seems like he could be making even a larger, because he did like Gangs of New York, which is kind of
same
it's
writer.
A story about the founding of New York, but it's much more a story of America, right? And maybe this too fits into that, because I think I have always tended to see organized crime as being like this minor thing where like people just did it to get by, but when we really think about how foundational it really is in building and propping up the American empire,
including
then I
the
think
unions,
it kind of, this type of film really sheds light on how dirty, maybe even we, America, have made a deal with the devil, so to speak, So it's not just... Yeah, I mean, there's that famous quote by Jesus. He says, "What does it profit a man to lose his soul, to gain the world and lose his soul?" And there's something interesting in that. Like, you gain the world, you gain power, you gain dominance, you gain that supremacy, but you lose your soul. And what does that ultimately profit in the end? And maybe there's like a warning here that Scorsese is kind of ever the moralist, trying to say, hey, let's be aware of the things that we do, and if we lose our soul, like, what does that ultimately profit us in the end?
Yeah, that's interesting. And it does feel like it in some ways romanticized like the good old movie, like the good old mafia movie and the good old mafia, but then again, when we look at the detail, none of it's all that glamorous. It's like we said, it's all about death. It's all about the costs and the repercussions and the regret. And when you stack all that up, it's like we're kind of like it's like the post-mafia movie. It's sort of a different take on that,
Oh, it totally is. This is the Unforgiven of mafia movies.
Yeah, it does feel that way, doesn't it?
In a way.
Well, and talking about it not being glamorous and kind of post-mafia movie.
The post-mafia.
Like, in terms of the form, like I was pleasantly surprised that his hits or murders were basically just tracking wide shots, and you see him just basically walk up to somebody, say, "Hey, what's up?" Pop, 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 and then he walks away, and then the guy just blood. It's not no frills. It's not the crazy zooms and push-ins to the fucking Rolling Stones that he's normally used to or to doing, and it's just like showing you the cold, harsh reality of what this guy does. He goes up under false pretenses, says hi to somebody, and then shoots and then kills him, and then like because somebody told him to for money. So it's like this guy, he's kind of the Terminator. It's like he's not you're right that he doesn't. You don't see him actively make the decisions.
The biggest, obviously, the most
like in Parasite this year, where like literally the whole movie, every scene of the movie, you're into the minds of the characters. You're seeing they're coming to every decision. You're just like, all right, he gets money in a wallet. He's going to kill somebody, and then you see it very cold.
The only time we have any contemplation, and it's very silent, which is appropriate, I guess, for this character, is when he's told he's going to have to do this with Jimmy Hoffa. He's like having that the shitty Total cereal, and Pesci is like so nonchalant. He's like, we're gonna drive here. We're gonna get on a plane. Give me your glasses. You're gonna do this thing, and he's just like, my stomach is churning then, right? Because it's like, my God, this is his friend, and that's the only time we ever see like any hesitation. The build up to
that scene was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was tense.
It was very tense. Like even just driving down the street and looking at what house, like you're like, will you just fucking get to the house already? Like what's in the house? Who's in the house? What's happening? Like it's handled so well. But then to Ryan's point, the way that he kills Jimmy again,
it's so brutal,
so easy, and so cold, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, fuck, man. Like, he even pats him on the back as he turns. Like, Jimmy walks into the house, and he says, let's get out of here, Frank. And Frank kind of, like, guides him gently to the door and just touches him with his left hand, and then just pulls out the pistol and shoots him twice. And you're like, holy fuck. Like, it was almost so easy that it was anticlimactic, but yet because of the buildup and because of the relationship and because the internal torment, then it made it not easy for us, and I'm sure not easy for him.
No, yeah, totally. And did it? So I keep calling him Todd, but his son, so Jimmy Hoffa's son, Todd from Breaking Bad,
Chuckie.
Chuckie.
Yeah,
Jesse Plemons.
I'm thinking of like the Ricky Lee Jones song. So does Chuckie know that his dad's being killed now? I mean, this is his son, right? Does he? I can't. I know that
he said that he didn't know. He said that all he knew was that he was going to pick someone up and take his dad to this place. But that's actually in the voiceover at one point.
Yeah. It's later on. I know he does some time for it, but I figure like he would know what happened. But anyway, and the fish scene, I was not a fan of the fish. I don't like that kind of dialogue.
Well, interesting to know right now that actually James Hoffa is the president of the Teamsters. One of Jimmy's sons is actually the president of the Teamsters at this moment.
Well, I did not know that.
Wow, nutty. Well, we've got...
And he's the second longest president behind like Tobin or something. Like I can't remember the guy's name, but whoever was the longest person from like the first president, I think it was, of the Teamsters.
That's crazy.
Interesting stuff that it's still in the family.
I know. It's a nice little nepotism there. So we've got... is there any... I mean, we're kind of pressed for time. We're already at 55 minutes, but anything... Let's really quickly. Anything about the history that was illuminating as you were diving in for your research, Austin or Ryan, about this story?
We're not even halfway through our 3.5 hour podcast. What are you talking about?
Yeah. We can now put up the title card.
Yeah,
this is like part
one.
Like Mandy. We can just put up the title of the movie now, in an hour in. But anything that kind of stood out to you, or things? I mean, again, as I kept finding every vignette here, the Nashville trial, every person who died. At first, I thought that was just like a comedic bit, but like every little caption and title card of how they died, when they died, etc., all historically accurate as far as I could tell. I know there's plenty of controversy as to whether this book was accurate, or if his entire story, if Frank's entire story, the real story, is real or is just a fabrication. It seems, I read an article in Forbes where Scott Bornstein said that there are people who are a bit skeptical of the FBI. I think the FBI and historians feel like it's a bit unsubstantiated and heavily doubted this confession of his, given the facts. But anyway, anything else that kind of stood out that you'd like to bring up for the audience, for our Show Me the Meaning listeners?
What you think, Ryan?
Well, I am surprised that many people can keep a secret for that long. I mean, and you're right that there are a million conspiracy theories even about Frank Sheeran's story, but I don't know. From what I've read, a lot of people seem to believe it, and I need to read the fucking book. Is kind of what I've decided. If I want to be a true I paint houses historian.
Yeah, I think for me, what this did more than anything was trigger a curiosity to want to study more, like the relationship between organized labor and the mafia and the state, and then the battle between like these special interest groups, organized labor in particularly, fighting against big corporations, right? Like that's Hoffa's big speech was that, we stand in solidarity. These big corporations are trying to kind of come in and depress our wages and lay us off and shift towards automation and all this other stuff. And then it's like, so how can we stand together? And then how does this noble cause get tied up in maybe ignoble activities like murdering people and putting pressure on people? And is that like a means to an end kind of logic? And do we kind of just have to throw our hands up in the air and say, well, sometimes you got to get your hands dirty in order to do good things? Or you know what I mean? Like it made me want to kind of delve more into that stuff, because you kind of get this us against the world kind of thing going on with Jimmy Hoffa. And I think maybe you could even take this with like the Sicilian mafia itself, starting with the old family, the Cosa Nostra in Italy that comes over, that it's kind of, we're trying to make our way in this new world that didn't want us at first. You call us guineas and you don't accept us. And then they start to climb the ranks of power. And so there's something really interesting then about the little guy gaining power, but then you still have large capital and corporations, and then you have this messy involvement with the state. You have special interests on one side, special interests on the other side. Like it made me just become really interested in American history, which I haven't been as interested in because I've been living abroad, and so I've been trying to study more about world history. But this made me want to kind of see like this other side of American history that they did not fucking teach us at all in
I want to
school,
spend a lot more time with the Kennedys now. I'm like, oh man, there was some dirt there. I think it was, in some ways it felt like it was like finally we're getting our comeuppance on the Kennedys. It felt like the mafia got their movie. Like just like fuck those guys. It felt like, I mean, there's so many moments when I love Jimmy like raising the flag, didn't like the flag at half-mast. I mean, there were some pieces that were quite funny. But yeah, overall, I think the same thing. Like sort of just, I found myself going into rabbit holes, reading fun articles, and I thought it was just an interesting way in. Good entertainment can be a kind of cool path into history. So I thought it was cool, and it's not going to be, unlike Lincoln, it's not going to be the movie that your teacher rolls up in front of class on a little TV screen and plays on a VHS tape. This ain't that movie. This is not such a sweet movie. But it totally should
be, man. It totally should be, shouldn't it?
I mean, it's dark and violent, and I think in that way it's cool. But I don't think you're not going to see it in a high school classroom, probably.
Yeah, so, okay. At university, maybe.
Right. Yeah. So you're a studio executive at Netflix. You've got $160 million you can spend on any movie. Do you spend it on this movie, or do you spend it somewhere else?
Absolutely. Are you kidding? You're getting the dream team back together.
Woo!
And it's a huge... I bet you that they definitely got their money's worth, even though it did cost a boatload.
Yeah, $160 million. They said the equivalent would require a $500 million box office, which I don't think this movie would have gotten. But it's going to help them, again, just like Roma, be back in the running for Best Picture. I'm sure they're going to have... it's an award season movie, and it's a prestige film. I mean, getting Scorsese, I think another meta element, getting Scorsese to make a movie for Netflix is probably a pretty big deal. And yeah, I mean, I had a good time. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my money. I don't really care if I need to make it back, but I'm glad. It felt like a Megan Ellison kind of move to get the best directors and make the best movies possible, and that's totally cool.
Well, what they're doing to me just seems completely unsustainable. I mean, they're spending like $12 billion a year on original movies and stuff. I mean, I don't get it. Like how like even if half the world is subscribed to Netflix, does that even add up? Like
I don't know. I'm gonna invest in Theranos and WeWork and Netflix. These all make sense to me, Ryan.
Well, the new economic model that a lot of people are writing about, there's a guy named Michel Fer. It's Feher. He's a Belgian French.
I have some Bitcoin to sell you.
Well, his whole thing is that we don't need to worry primarily about making profits as long as our market share, our market capitalization has value. So it doesn't matter if
the Amazon model.
Yeah, it's the Amazon, it's the LinkedIn, it's the Facebook, it's the Snapchat and Instagram. It's the new model of these platforms, and that's what Netflix is doing. Is they're becoming a platform to kind of just basically get people into their network. And so as long as more people become subscribers, then the fear is, okay, well then they can like create like super exploitative rates and get super profits in the future when they do become profitable. But some people say, no, you don't need to.
Something's got to give.
Well, as long as you have an endless stream of access to cheap credit, then Netflix could sustain this potentially, because it's just loans based on top of loans based on top of loans. And as long as you can service your loans, then it doesn't fucking matter ultimately, as long as you can service those loans, you know?
They got to make money at some point, Austin.
But that is making money. As long as you are making money
run down a rabbit hole,
through access.
The Amazon example is a perfect one, which is, you lose money for a long time, but you build a huge footprint. And at any point when you're able to then switch into profit mode, you've got such unbelievable reach with tentacles into every single category, and you're unstoppable. And so effing convenient, and on and on. Well, anyway.
And if Netflix can keep making, like, I'm just tired of Netflix because they are making like 95% shit. But if they can still keep making 5% like really good original content, then that's gonna like really be a great boon to their model moving forward, And I think it like, I don't know, it makes like Joes like me keep my subscription, right? Like I'm still paying $12 a month or whatever it is, and I probably don't even watch that many Netflix things anymore. But I got it because the Irishman.
I'm digging their output. Marriage Story was cool.
I heard that was great.
I
have not seen it yet.
Yeah, there's a bunch of good stuff there.
Well, let us know in the comments, or let us know by email, movies@wisecrack.co, or the voicemail line, which I keep forgetting. But you can leave us a voicemail too. Let us know what you're watching. Let us know what we should cover on the next installment and next season of Show Me the Meaning. We do have some voicemails. I don't know how you guys do it on time. Are you guys cool to get some Parasite voicemails, or should we save them for next time?
Let's chat.
All right, we got we have a whole bunch of Parasite voicemails. Thank you. Parasite was such a great movie. I was not on the podcast, so maybe you guys want to catch up here, but you've seen Parasite as well. I think you said, Austin, right? So let's dive in. We've got 4 really good ones. I'll just pick Ming for a second. Here we go.
Hi, Show Me the Meaning crew. My name is
voicemail.
Ming from New York City. I just listened to your podcast about Parasite, and there were 2 points that I thought were really poignant that I wanted to point out. By the way, this movie had me absolutely in tears. I was like wailing in a dark theater. Had to roll all to myself. It was pretty powerful. Well, one of the things that really moved me was how Moon Gwang, the former housekeeper, was talking about when she and her husband were living in the house before I think the Parks moved in, and how they had this very lovely moment in which they were both upstairs, so they weren't in the basement, they were both upstairs, and the husband said, like, because we had access to these resources, like, even in the music, we felt like people. And it was a scene in which, like, you actually see the husband sort of act like a human instead of like a monster or a parasite. You kind of see him like start to dance, and you kind of realize like, oh, there is a price to humanity. Like there is an aspect of humanity that can be purchased with resources. And the second point was largely the rock thing that they had been given. You kind of always see it in water. So at one point you see the rock submerged in the dirty sewerage water. I think at one point you see it submerged in another type of water earlier in the film, but in the end you see it submerged in clean water. And it's, you see blood on it too. So there's this message about, this material symbol of wealth being covered in different forms of water. And you have violence, you have dirt, you have the shit, you have sort of the collective dirtiness of a society that really prioritizes wealth. And I thought it was really beautiful in the end that you see the rock in clear water. I don't think that it really means anything because it kind of contradicts the ending, which is still hopeful in a way that is sort of leaning towards more wealth. But yeah, I just thought it was really beautiful. It's like you have to get clean of these expectations. You have to let go for it to mean anything. And so it's hopeful.
Thank you.
And I think it's a sign that maybe Kiwoo will make the money to save his dad. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for all the work you do. I love it. Bye.
Thank you, Ming. Yeah, we've got a moist rock, and we're talking about the housekeeper's husband, like this sort of price for
Great
humanity.
voicemail.
Yeah, very
Thank
good.
you.
Ming, thank you for that, and thank you to everybody who's been sending us voicemails. Again, the number is 213-534-8807 or 21-ELF-HUT or ELF-GUT-07. Leave us a voicemail. But yeah, very interesting voicemail on Ming. Let's talk about the rock. Firstly, we do see this rock constantly in moist applications. We've got water, we got like the plumbing, there's blood. It's just constantly mired. That rock is such a clear symbol of, I guess, prosperity, right? And similar to this movie we just talked about, the sort of the price that you pay for that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know, because like in the Western post-Christian world, water always has a particular set of meanings, right? Like purity, cleansing, or like I think I brought up in the actual podcast that you get the rock submerged into the unconscious. Like it's you have like the image of the iceberg that is the typical way that we think about the unconscious. Like a little bit is sticking above it, but like the real depths of the psyche are like dwelling down beneath the surface. Mm-hmm. But you get this rock that's submerged. So maybe the desire for prosperity becomes more of an unconscious thing. It becomes more ideological that the son has to kind of buy into so that he can continue to perpetuate this desire that he might be able to save his father, even if it's a total fantasy and he'll never be able to do it. But I don't know. I'd be curious to know that if in like Korean mythology and history, if water has the same or similar types of themes. And so I'd love for someone to kind of, who's more informed, like tell us, like rocks and water, is there something more concrete in Korean culture that can elaborate what's going on there? Mm-hmm. You know?
You're
Do rocks get dropped in water in Korea? Send us emails, please.
We do know that in was it Philadelphia, guns get submerged in water quite a lot. I love that. Jumping back to our main episode.
Are they being baptized? Is that like purity for the sin that was just committed with the crime?
No, exactly. And there's a lot of the baptism scenes. I don't know. You just mentioned kind of the baptism side, and then let's talk about the housekeeper's husband. So we see this scene where they're kind of out and about in the house on their own, left to their own devices, with beautiful food and great music, and they're listening to the stereo, I believe, and dancing to this beautiful music. And Ming's point is just that there is kind of a price to humanity, to being able to sort of dance and enjoy one's life does require, nice resources. I feel like we see counterpoints to that outside of the film, obviously. Plenty of people who don't have a lot of resources who still have plenty of joy and experience great life without the means, without the Western means. But what do you think there?
What do you think, Rye?
I thought she put it pretty eloquently in her voicemail.
Okay.
I don't really have much to add, honestly.
Okay, let's dive in.
The only thing I would say is that there's this great documentary a while ago. I can't remember what it's called. It's called like Conversations with the Dalai Lama or something like that. And it's this British journalist who, after spending months and months and months traveling around like Africa and in a bunch of, I don't remember if he's in like sub-Saharan African context and things like that, but he's in all of these like impoverished non-Western nations, and he goes to finally meet with the Dalai Lama. And his first question is something like, I've traveled through all of these impoverished areas. And he said, and I'm from a very wealthy, he's like British, he's like, I'm from a very wealthy suburb in London. He said, but the amount of joy and smiles that I saw on people's faces in these impoverished areas really was kind of stark to me. And he's like, why is that? And the Dalai Lama makes something serious that's like, like the Notorious B.I.G., more money, more problems kind of statement, where he's like, but that's because these people in these communities, what they have to rely on is themselves and each other and family and love and laughter and dance and song. And so there's something about, maybe you need resources in order to be happy, but it's maybe how it is that we value those resources. So if you value material and the accumulation of material commodities, then you're going to be in an endless chase to need to acquire them in order to achieve that level of humanity. But if you don't value those in the first place, right? Like if you don't value gold as being valuable in a monetary term, but you value a sunset, or you value your family, or you value the spiritual connections that you have with nature or whatever, then you don't need the accumulation of commodities in order to find a similar type of abundance, but abundance just takes a different cultural form.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to piggyback on what you just said, I think it's kind of like that, but like really they're talking about like getting your bare basic necessities. You know, if that is just taken care of, if basically life is a seemingly an endless series of luxury or leisure time, I mean, then, you know, it's easier to have the appearance and perception that, oh, I'm a good person because I'm like, you know, you can, I don't know, go to your local pet shelter or homeless shelter, help out. You can feel good about yourself. You can you can seem like you're this happy person enjoying your life, you know, whereas if all you have to, if you're toiling away all day and that's your number one thought that, you know, when you wake up and go to bed at night is just how am I going to put food on the table, then yeah, your life seems less valuable, you know, is kind of what I think that she was saying in that scene. Mm-hmm. Or appears less valuable, or yeah, your time is just, you know, it could be so easy to be a good person or a happy person if you had all the money and resources to do so.
Next voicemail: do you want Anonymous, Robert, or Wolfgang?
Oh, we're going based off their name, huh? I guess Wolfgang sounds
okay.
The gnarliest.
Hey, Wisecrack, it's Wolfgang. I just had two quick thoughts about Parasite. The first one was when the father's beginning to be his driver, and he mentioned something about knowing everything below 36 in the parallel line. That was a reference to the line in between North and South Korea, which my American sensibilities didn't pick up on. And then, as well as that, I also interpreted the ending as him only being able to believe that he would be rich enough to get that house because he had brain damage, which I feel like you guys got really close to at the end of the last podcast but didn't say. Thanks, and have a good one.
Thanks, Wolfgang. So, interesting tidbit on the line. What's the point about the mental, like the brain damage to be able to afford the house just from all the banging?
I don't remember the part of his narration at the end where he said that he could only he was going to have this whole plan go through because of what had happened to him, or. I thought it was in spite of that. Am I wrong? Did I miss something?
I think what Wolfgang's saying is that the only way that he can believe that is because he's disillusioned, like he's fucked up in the head, and so therefore he has to lie to himself, thinking like, "Oh, I'll be able to achieve this," but in reality, he never will.
Oh, like all that is like a fantasy at the very end.
Yeah, because I think that's the issue. And so even Ming in the last call said that she thinks that maybe there is a sense in which he will be able to achieve that. That like there's some hope, right? Like whether or not he will or not, he truly believes that he will. But then Wolfgang is saying, well, maybe the only reason he believes that is because he's fucked up in the head and he's crazy.
Oh, and he got the brain damage from getting hit on the rock with the rock.
So
yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like the hope was beat into him with the hope rock.
No, it's interesting. I mean, right? Yeah, I mean, in a way, yes.
It was transferred. The hope was transferred from the rock when it slammed into his brain.
Because I read that as
now he has hope.
We don't know if that's real or not. That ending, but
hey, we're showing you the meaning.
Thank
it's
you, man.
For real. Play that Inception sound.
Exactly. I got to switch boards here. Boom. Thank you, Wolfgang.
All right, you're welcome.
A little golf clap for you, Wolfgang. Thank you. This is Wolfgang right now. All right, let's we'll go to one more voicemail. I don't know if we have any emails today, Austin or Ryan, if you want to dive into, but let me play one more voicemail. If you guys want to dive in, we can. But let me, I'm going to pull up Anonymous. And Robert, sorry I didn't get to you right now. Maybe we'll do a mailbag episode soon, and let's dive right in.
Hi, guys. I just listened to your Parasite podcast, and you guys mentioned the architect and why he adds significance in the film. The only thing I could really think of is the general reverence both the maid family and the Kim family have for the upper class. I think this kind of speaks to the director's broader message in the movie and the difficulty in trying to unite the working class, because both the maid and the family want to be part of the elite, so they don't blame or even question the capitalist system which led them to their essentially like destitute living situation. Their belief that they could one day be like the Parks or the architect or even his friend that studied America is based on the false hope that capitalism provides, that kind of like the whole American dream thing, that everyone can make it to the top with enough work and conviction. I really feel like the last scene of the movie is the director essentially saying that's not true, because the son did not have a chance to be like the Parks before the movie started. And at the end of the movie, now that he has a criminal record and a brain injury, it's even more impossible, but he's still buying into that capitalist vision that one day he will be able to buy that house. Anyways, that's my...
Thank you. Another showing the meaning. We've got it perfect. We got capitalists and communists on the line here today to talk about this.
I guess when people bring up, like, you know, it's this capitalist vision that promise that it doesn't upheld. I mean, capitalism is like a system that we're living in, and yeah, like human beings, you know, that use a system to get wealthy and stuff. Like, there's expectations that come with that at some point, and the American dream is just like a story. But I feel like what the guy's just using logic at the end of the day. In my mind, it's like he's like, okay, if I do this, if I get this amount of money, then I can or if I work real hard on my college, then I'll get this job, and then if I get that job, I can get this amount of money, and then I can get this house, and yada yada yada. I mean, like, I don't see why people like extrapolate like that capitalism is like brainwash somebody into thinking that just thinking logically like that, those steps is like a bad thing, other than, yeah, like you said before, just the sheer desire for need and excess and goods is not necessarily qualitatively a bad thing. I mean, a good thing. But
I think the caller's saying that it
makes life more fun.
Like believing that it's possible for anybody is the trap for these characters, where they think that they can
everybody and anybody.
That they think that they can escape their situation. What's your read on it, Austin? I know you're pretty sympathetic to this kind of stuff.
They can.
I mean, I shouldn't open that can of worms. And we're done for today.
This is opening a can of worms. So I'll just quickly say two things. One, we got a lot of emails about the architect, the identity of the architect. And so I think there's some really interesting stuff going on there. Like, a lot of people saw the architect as being like a divine figure, like almost a godlike figure that's worshipped, that is like behind the scenes, that is ultimately creating the conditions out of which this beautiful house and this beautiful story plays out, right? So if you view the architect as being God and the house as being like this other world that you can aspire to, then it's all about like ascending and climbing the ladder to divinity that is being like overseen in this house by the powers of the architect. I think that's some really interesting stuff to think about. And then I think, Jacob, what you just said is right. Like, the issue is capitalism is a mode of production, and what that means is it's a system of how it is that our instruments, our commodities are produced and then reproduced, how it functions, right? So capitalism is a mode of production, a way of production. There are other non-capitalist modes of production, right? But capitalism is also, as the great political economist Jason Moore says, it is a mode of rationality, which means that it is a way of thinking. It operates from a type of thinking. It has certain presuppositions, and then it reproduces not just commodities and value and profits and money, but it also produces ways of thinking. So in other words, it produces logics. So Ryan was just saying that it just seems like a simple set of steps or logics, but if you really study the history of the development of logic, if you understand how these things kind of fit within, like, I would say, this particular mode of rationality, you see that the logic that he's expressing, that the son is expressing, that Ryan was just talking about, isn't logic in some sort of objective, universal sense, but it's a type of capitalist logic. If I do this, then I will get this. It's called instrumental rationality in philosophical terms. And so there's a type of...
Quid pro quo, they call it.
A quid pro quo. Right. Do for me, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. But it's like, if I attain this, then I can get more of that. And then the question is how does that more get created? And so this is where you get certain critiques of how it is that more is developed and created. How are profits generated? So the mode of production is also a mode of rationality. I know that might sound abstract, but if you just Google those things, or you can listen to my other podcast where we wax philosophical on this stuff all the time, and we will bore the shit out of you with politics and philosophy and shit. It's called Owls at Dawn. And we are card-carrying commies. So, you know, you can get a little bit of that commie shit in there if you want.
So thank you for that call, Anonymous. I wish we had a name for you. I would thank you.
Yeah, Anon. Thank you.
Anon. Thank you. So
Thank you, QAnon.
Thank you. So any emails you'd like to dive into, Austin?
No, I like, literally all the ones from Parasite that caught my attention were about the architect, and so I kind of was trying to like condense all of them into just kind of mentioning that bit, because I think that's the one thing that I stepped away from still really unsure about too. But I really liked that reading that like a handful of emailers mentioned.
As a reminder, kind of like the architect is what bit? It says it's the actual architect of the house itself?
Yeah. Of the Parks house.
The Parks house, who she admires greatly and kind of talks about like as almost like a lore. Well, yeah.
Jacob, I very quickly have two tweets about the Irishman I'd like to read.
Are they about me?
No, they are not about you. I haven't been looking at the chat.
Good.
So one is Colin Quinn from Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
Said, "The Irishman is superior to Goodfellas in that Goodfellas cut out all the driving and checking into hotels and just left the exciting parts."
Jesus.
So I love that. And then we got a great reply from Norm Macdonald, also from Saturday Night Live, who said, "Very true. Also, the Irishman made the interesting choice of having the young De Niro and young Pesci shuffle around like old men and talk with old man voices, creating a fascinating dissonance that was never annoying. Not Goodfellas."
Bravo,
yeah,
guys.
I did notice that when old Robert De Niro tried to stomp on the shopkeeper's hand, you could tell that it was a man in his 70s, not a man in his 40s.
It was like the knees didn't look good. Like they were kind of doing a little shuffle.
That shot in particular was pretty egregious, but yeah, I like the movie more than those Saturday Night Live guys did, but I thought that I got a good chuckle.
Thank you for sharing those. That's beautiful. Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we might have shown the meaning tonight, folks.
Something happened.
Something happened. I got the EBGBs for a second there. It felt good. Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Ryan. Where can we find you on the internet? Let's start with you, Ryan Haley.
Ryan's Game Show on YouTube and Facebook and shit like that, and Ryan Shorts. I put stuff on both of those periodically.
Yeah, I was saying on the South Park podcast earlier this week, which you should definitely check out the season. But I was saying Ryan's got a beautiful short on Visit Memphis from last year. I want to say maybe 2 years ago. It was just amazing, and I am gonna go visit. I rewatched that video, and dude, I pissed my pants.
Oh, dude, yeah, go check off all those things. I hope you have a fun.
I can't wait to go see the ducks and that Bass Pro Shops pyramid, just as Ramses intended. That's Ryan's Shorts and Visit Memphis. So check that out on Facebook or YouTube.
I really like the one when you go to Burning Man too, and you have to raise all the money.
Yeah.
That was like a year ago. Or
Ryan's Shorts are like, it's like my favorite thing to watch. It's the best show on TV.
I appreciate it.
No, it's great shit. So and Ryan and Austin, I'm sorry, where can we find you on the cyberwebs?
You can hit me up on Insta. It's AUS_HAY. I've been a lot more active lately, and I will be moving forward on Insta. You can also hit me up on Twitter, Austin_Hayden. And then I've got my philosophy podcast that I do with my buddy Troy. It's Owls at Dawn. You can find it anywhere. And then I've been doing this weird read through the Bible. Like, for people who don't know me, I was training to be a pastor for a long time, and I ended up doing graduate degrees in theology before doing other work in philosophy, which is where I work now, philosophy and political economy. But I'm like rereading the Bible for the first time in 10 years, and so I'm uploading videos as I'm going through it, and I am done with Genesis and Exodus. I'm like halfway through Leviticus, and I'm putting at least 2 or 3 videos up a week, and it's just kind of like a real quick flyby as I'm reading through the Bible from like a post-Christian, post-evangelical, philosophical, and political and economic perspective. So check that out on YouTube. Just look for Austin Hayden or Austin Hayden Smith. It's called An Apostate's Bible Read.
I love that, man. That's so cool. I hear it's a pretty good book. Not too.
Dude, I'm so glad that you're fucking better, man. That was scary, dude. I'm glad that you're back talking movies with us.
Me too, man. Me too.
We're very happy you're back, man. You can check out Wisecrack has got a whole bunch of amazing new articles. We've just launched this really cool partnership with medium.com. Wisecrack's entire publications on Medium. Alec, who runs our writing team, has beautiful articles 3 times a week with really beautiful illustrations and art by J.R. Fleming, another really awesome artist who worked with us on a bunch of shows. So check it out at medium.com/Wisecrack. There's some really cool stories. We have some news stories now on craft beer and postmodernism that just went live. We've got a really cool story on Spotify Rewind, or that Spotify year in review thing that was pretty spooky. So check it all out. Medium.com/Wisecrack. You can find us anywhere Wisecrack, at Wisecrack, etc. I'm on Twitter too, although I don't do anything there, at Jacob Solomon. And I just found out today that Obama follows me, which is crazy. I don't know why. No clue. Maybe it's a robot. But anyway, thanks so much. And we have been live from where, Ryan?
Goodbye from Hollywood, California.
Goodbye. That I love with all the internet outages. It's just hilarious because it's like goodbye from Hollywood, California. It's been fun. See you guys soon. I think we're not going to be back until the new year on this show. So have a happy holiday, everybody. Hope you guys have a great Christmas and a happy New Year, happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, etc., etc. Enjoy the movies, enjoy your Netflix, enjoy Star Wars, and please send us all of your emails. movies@wisecrack.com. We'll catch you next year. Deuces.
I have one more thing.
What?
Are we still live?
I think so, maybe. Yeah, we are.
What's your favorite movie of the year, real quickly?
Oh, my God. I love...
that's two on the spot.
Parasite for me, probably. And I was going to say Mandy, although that was last year.
Austin,
I love Mandy, too.
I'm going to say Angelo, which was a smaller film that I saw at the Sydney Film Fest. It was actually my favorite film, more so than Parasite, even though I think Parasite might be a better technical film, but Angelo was my favorite film of the year.
Beautiful.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go with Climax. Gaspar
I haven't seen that yet, man.
Shit.
I have
Nightmare from Hell. It was crazy.
I have not seen The Lighthouse. I have so many movies to catch up on. But I think the best movie that I watched all year. Were you there for Stalker? Was that you there, Ryan? For the Tarkovsky viewing?
Tarkovsky
movie? That's my favorite movie of 2019 was Tarkovsky's Stalker from 1960, whatever. Yeah,
sure. I don't think that
I'm
counts,
a little behind,
but
Ryan.
we'll take
No, it's Parasite was, for me, I think just the best movie so far. I loved it. All right, guys.
Nice,
thanks so much. See y'all in 2020.
Later.
Goodbye from Hollywood, California.
Deuces. Peace.